chaos, littleness, huge conspiracies, and just a little pinch of public anarchy. That is what this iceberg enholds. The mass hysteria iceberg enholds countless of cases of mass hysteria, or a group of people, either small or big, think a certain event is going on around them, while in reality, nothing might be going on at all. Hysteria in itself means an exaggerated or uncontrolled emotion or excitement, or feeling in a certain way. So when it's mass hysteria, the masses have hysteria. I just flipped the words, but still, you know what I mean. It's when a group thinks too much about a certain thing, and it gets too serious. This iceberg was made by a walrus, which is a kind of iceberg legend having some hundreds of icebergs to his name. And if you want to actually talk with Walrus or me, you can join the Discord, where both me and him are in it. We do a bunch of dumb stuff. Actually, mostly dumb stuff. Anyways, let's dig down the iceberg and see what kind of strange things the masses are rambling about in their hysteric state. Oh shit, that's in like 6 days. Should I buy something? Perhaps. Should I record something? Oh yes. Black Friday is the day right after Thanksgiving where everyone goes out and buys gifts for Christmas because the shops have an odd percentage on almost anything. Which is heaven for a greedy guy like me. Those 80%. Despite being an American thing, it is celebrated all over the world because a good price tag is always welcomed. And of course, everything from America is batshit crazy. You would think it would be a normal day of going out shopping, but no, it's a battle for the lowest price. People hoard in on these malls to get the very best price, leaving some actually damaged after a simple shopping trip. Entire stampedes have been made because people can't control these giant masses wanting to buy some cheap shit. And you've all seen the videos. It's a yearly mass chaos event, and I love it. Bring a little anarchy into the system. UFOs are a giant mass hysteria which everyone knows something about. It's actually so well known that the US military no longer uses the term to describe unidentified flying objects because everyone thinks it's aliens. They use something else now. We've ruined actual military terminology because we're too hysteric about aliens. The hysteria here in itself is very obvious. An alien has flown by, adopting a cow or something. Literally anything about aliens is a kind of mass hysteria because there is no solid proof that they've actually been here. Only theories and undocumented sightings. However, there is a lot of it, and by a lot I mean almost endless amounts. They've also made everything in human history because apparently humans can't make anything great without it being aliens. And yes, we could build the pyramids, we were just that great. Shut up about aliens. Gotta catch 'em all. And by all, I mean seizures. Gotta go wild. The Pokemon episode, Dono Shinshi Porygon, yes I am racist, was the 38th episode of the Pokemon series. It started out like any normal episode, having a bunch of viewers, being all the way up to 4.6 million households in Japan when it first got shown, all watching this at the same time. At the time, Pokemon was the shit. It's still a big deal today, but back then, in Japan, oh man, everyone had to watch it. The episode is pretty much a normal episode. The episode centers around Porygon, which Ash uses to enter a computer. However, in this episode, some kind of missile was fired towards the gang, where Pikachu used lightning bolt to make the missile explode mid-air, which caused flashing colors on the screen, which no one at Nintendo headquarters realized would give epilepsy to those who have it. And remember, that episode had 4.6 million households watching. Mega oops. up to 685 kids were sent to the hospital after getting seizures from the show. Guess how that went? The show was put off air in Japan for up to 4 months wherever they could return, because it's huge. The scene was cut, but the damage had already been done. Some parents didn't want their children watching it because of, epilepsy. Some kids stayed in the hospital for weeks, and South Park made fun of them. God, I wish that was me. Cryptids is a thing we all know. There's the Iceberg community, and the cryptid community is very close, because, mysteries. They're basically animals or living beings which aren't official in mainstream science because they're very hidden or maybe not even real. Most of them aren't real. They're either confirmed fake or not confirmed yet. So take that with a grain of salt. Despite their living condition being a weird one, they still have a huge fan base, and there's a lot of these weirdos around, like the Fresno Nightwalker, or aliens, I guess, is also a thing, or just any weird creatures in the real world. But are they real? Perhaps not. Perhaps it's just hysteria. The Salem Witch Trial was a big episode in the otherwise long term of witch hunting all around the Christian world. Basically, anyone who did some weird magic stuff was perhaps a witch, which of course worked together with the devil, and therefore they must die, for the sake of God. But how could anyone be sure that someone was a witch? Well, in Massachusetts, back in the colonial USA, it was trials. Up to 200 people were accused, and 30 was killed because of witch activity. As we all know today, witchcraft isn't real. Therefore, they were all accused for nothing. Hysteria. Of course, there was much more than just witchcraft and religion in this. Gender and politics also had a play in it. But in the end, people were trialed and executed because of witch activity, which in the end proved fake. Some 100 years later. The Satanic Panic sounds like hell of a heavy metal song. Actually, let's see if it's real. Ah, there it is. Impending Doom. Okay, the actual Satanic Panic is a moral panic which started back in the 1980s and is still kind of going on today, where a bunch of satanic rituals might or might not be going on right around the corner. In other words, satanic rituals are increasing, which some see as a very bad thing. And this isn't of course some kind of religious problem, it's also a very normal problem as it is abuse of many kinds. Human sacrifice and child captivity are all things in these rituals, if they are real. We don't know if these rituals are actually happening, as it is very connected with the QAnon theory. Basically, the elite, the left, and all of those are fucking children in an organized child pornography chain, while the right is trying to save it. We don't know if this occult ritual thing is actually going on, or if it's just humans having hysteria. But for now, something satanic might be going on. This should have felt like yesterday, but it feels like forever ago. The great toilet paper pandemic of 2020 was a side effect of the coronavirus lockdowns all around the world. You know what happened? It's still going on today. The coronavirus swept over the world, made many sick and even killed some, making the national governments of many countries lock down. This also meant that quarantine was implemented, meaning that people had to stay at home for an elongated time. And we all know how it actually went. The introverts loved it, the extroverts hated it, we all sat at home and watched TV. Yet, in the beginning, it was all different. People went mad. They thought an actual apocalypse was over us, and they ran to the nearest market and bought all the toilet paper they needed. In fact, they bought more than that. They sheltered up for months, despite nothing actually happening. In some countries, you could still go out and shop pretty much whenever you wanted, just limited, and in some countries, it just took a mask and everything was fine. Yet we all thought it was gonna end, and shops were just emptied. I went out myself, not to panic buy, but just to regular buy, and I could see that the entire place was almost emptied. And it was so weird because nothing actually happened despite the lockdown. It was just that. And for some reason, they targeted the toilet paper, which went haywire. The price increased and people still bought it. The 2016 clown sighting events, I guess you would call it, was a weird trend which happened all around the world, although mainly in the US and Canada. People would go out dressed as evil clowns and intimidate almost everyone, on the roads, in the schools, and just having a laugh. Although they were the only one, everyone hated it. This led to a giant scare where police even got involved in some cases, saying they should be careful about clown attacks. There weren't that many actual clown attacks, but still, threatening people is still illegal. As these clown attacks went on, there was talk of a purge or a giant attack on Halloween where all the clowns would attack everyone they could. But as it seems, nothing happened. Or rather, the purge didn't happen. Something else, which was special, did happen. Hunts. People were tired of these clowns scaring everyone, so people took up their baseball bats, went out and beat the shit out of clowns. Slowly after that, it stopped, funny enough. And that is a very important lesson to learn. If someone is scaring you to a point you can't take, just punch them and everything will be fine. Hey guys, the world ends in 2012. Oh, it's 2021? I gotta leave. This whole the world's gonna end in 2012 thing started all the way back some 5,000 years ago when the Mesoamerican long count calendar started. And it was going to end on December 21st, 2012, where it was predicted that terrible events would happen all over the world. Planes would crash, meteors would hit the earth, everyone would die, and it would all be terrible. People hid in shelters and went out protesting on the street, and on the 21st, 2012, everyone embraced the calamity. And then, it became the 22nd. Then they thought, hey, maybe it's tomorrow, and then again, nothing happened. And here we are. The Earth isn't dead yet, hooray! And at this point we realized that the calendar didn't mean that the world would end when it ends, it just means, oh, we'll start again. Which we then did, and then nothing happened. It's just hysteria, you know? Jeez, get it by now, it's the entire iceberg. The year 2000 problem, or just a Y2K problem, was a giant worldwide error and bug in computers where after the millennium changed, instead of saying welcome to 2000, it said welcome to 1900s. This was a giant problem, as basically everyone had to fix some kind of watch or calendar. And of course, when something mass happens about something, well, anything actually, hysteria ensues. People thought that their computers would malfunction and that everything would go haywire. Trains would go off track, planes would crash down, the economy would crumble, and oh shit, nothing happened. Well, a lot did happen. Basically, everyone with a calendar had to change it, but no one died, and no one even got hurt. If anything, it was just kind of annoying as you had to fix a lot of things, but it was over before we knew it. McCarthyism was a political belief which slowly began to rise in the 1940s and 50s, while the Second Red Scare swept America. At this point in history, the USA and the USSR were kind of good buds. They have just defeated Germans together and everything was fine. Except now there were two superpowers who wanted it all, because ideology. The Russians tried to get more power, and the Americans tried to prevent it. This also meant that anti-communist feelings grew in the USA, which led to McCarthyism. Basically, it's believed that everyone you know is a communist, and we must get rid of them as quickly as possible, because they're dangerous. A Republican senator from Wisconsin called Joseph McCarthy had an idea that the red was rising in America and that spies of the Soviet Unions were everywhere. Therefore, everyone had to be purged, which slowly began to be realized. A lot of actual communists and some not actual communists were thrown in jail and were watched over heavily, because you can't watch those communists too much. Some saw it as treason on freedom, while others saw it as a means to stop communism. Vive la Revolution! We will now shake out the shackles of tyranny! Anyways, I'm gonna go do some tyranny myself. Be right back, guys. The French Revolution was a period of chaos and uncertainty in France. The revolutionary era didn't last long before it all turned to shit. In the first summer of the revolution, the Great Fear swept over France, as people feared the grain shortage of the country. They started the revolution because they were hungry and starving. And now, they were going to starve mid-revolution? And who was that to blame? The elites. The French lower class thought that the famine plot was going around to handicap the revolution. The aristocrats were going to starve out the peasants and townsfolk together. So therefore, they armed up and prepared to attack if they were ever under the threat of starvation. While people did mobilize and prepare to stab a bitch all over the country, the new National Assembly made sure to appease the people so a revolution didn't happen in the middle of a revolution. That'd be too much revolution at once, you know. This whole Great Fear didn't go too far. However, other parts of this revolution did. Charlie, Charlie, are you there? That was everyone back in 2015, including me. Charlie, Charlie was a very simple challenge where I would put two pencils on each other on a piece of paper, one saying yes, yes, another saying no, no, and then asking some questions to Charlie, like, are you there? Are you real? Where is the money, bitch? And slowly, the paper would turn to either yes or no. It was a giant horror game which creeped everyone out. Especially the kids. Oh, so fun. Honestly, I don't know how it works, it just kinda did. You always knew how to make it, but how it was made was like, anything really, I don't care. It was fun, so I didn't care. There is an actual explanation for why it can happen, but honestly, it's kind of long. Basically, these pencils are very sensitive, meaning that they can very easily turn. Therefore, the slightest change in one's breath or air will change how the pencils are. And that's it. The magic is now gone. Now go back to not having fun. Oh yeah, someone got fired. 100%. The 2018 Hawaiian Falls Missile Alert crisis was an actual crisis back in 2018 when something went wrong in the security of the civilians in the state of Hawaii. For some reason, the alert said that missiles were inbound towards Hawaii, except there was no missiles at all. The short message said that nuclear missiles was on its course on Hawaii, meaning that in a few seconds the entire island would explode into a nuclear holocaust. Except nothing happened. But for a few 2 minutes or 5, actual horror, terror and hysteria went AWOL over the entire state. You would think. Surprisingly, a lot was actually calm during this event and thought nothing of it. Sure, some went into a panic and hugged their children goodbye, but others just kind of walked it off. And lo and behold, nothing happened. But hysteria. The dancing plague of 1518 was an actual real pandemic which began in the then German, now French city of Strasbourg. It happened without any rhyme or reason, and it's still a mystery to this day to what happened. Perhaps it wasn't a disease, but it also isn't certain if it was an actual choice made by the dancers, as they seem to be addicted to dancing. In Strasbourg alone, up to 400 people started to dance en masse for days. Eventually, they were discovered by the bishop and doctors in town, who escorted the pop-up party to the hospital, where they found nothing. Now, if you were quick, you would spot the fact that I said in Strasbourg alone there was something and something, which means that this dancing plague was documented in other areas of Europe than just Strasbourg, but also in Saxony and in southern Italy. There has been some modern theories as to why some people just began to dance uncontrollably for no apparent reason. One being en masse stress, where the dancing was a kind of psychotic result of the stress, but that isn't certain. It's still a mystery to this day. This has been covered to death, but yeah, the Momo challenge can be seen as a giant mass hysteria where everyone was scared that kids would do this dangerous challenge. And by everyone I mean teachers and untrusting parents. It was said that the challenges given to those who partook in the whole Momo challenge would get more and more dangerous as time went on, and eventually it would lead to suicide. Momo would dox you if you tried to quit mid-game. It made news headlines and schools were informed of the danger, but as it seems, it wasn't real. Like all internet hoaxes are. I mean, this was only a few years ago. We should have learned the lesson even by that point, but as it seems, we're all stupid and forget our lessons 2 seconds after we learned it. Back in 1804, the police of Hammersmith in London had gotten an endless amount of cases of ghost activity in and around the Hammersmith area. Don't know why we called the police regarding ghosts, but they did it nonetheless. It was said that it was a ghost of a suicide victim which apparently wandered around town. Since the police was apparently involved in ghost activity at the time, for some reason, they went out looking for the ghost. Eventually, this mass fear of a single ghost culminated with a police officer by the name of Francis Smith, who saw the alleged ghost and at the first response opened fire on the ghost. Now, when seeing a ghost, would your first reaction be to shoot it? It's a ghost, damn it. What? What is this, America or something? But the story gets weirder. That wasn't a ghost. That was a bricklayer wearing white, was now been shot and fell to the ground and died immediately. Haha, whoops. This meant that Francis Smith was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death, which then got reduced to a year of hard labor. That's hell of a decrease. As time went on, no ghost was actually found and things went back to normal in Hammersmith. But there still was a period where the entire town was looking for a single ghost, which they found in a way, but well, he's dead now. Oh no, Palestine, the Levant. Oh god. Well, in the West Bank area back in 1983, there were reports of a mass fainting all around the area. Up to 943 Palestinians found themselves hospitalized after a long time of dizziness, confusion, and then fainting. This happened to everyone from old men to young girls. And yes, this being in the most hot area, in the most hot region of the Earth, in the most hot planet on the solar system, in the most hot galaxy, led to some problems. It didn't take a long time before the local Palestinians and the government pointed a finger at the Israelis, saying that either the settlers or the government of Israel had poisoned the inhabitants. The government of Israel responded by saying that they weren't to blame. However, the mass anti-Israeli feelings in Palestine was to blame, thinking that the Palestinians had blamed the Israelis for something out of their power because of the political situation in the area. Some Israeli soldiers and civilians also got poisoned by this dizziness, as all soldiers with a gas mask was fine, but those without was becoming dizzy. As it seems, the UN couldn't find any kind of poison in the area, and there was no war started, so that's always good for that area. From one hotbed to another. During the days of democracy in Afghanistan, a weird event happened. In 2009 to 2012, the Taliban, which at that point was nothing more than an underground fighting force, was blamed for poisoning the waters of girls' schools across the country. The girls suffered from nausea and dizziness, which seems to be caused by the water. But just as the Palestinians fainting, there wasn't found any kind of poison in the water, and none was to blame really. However, many girls were put back from school by their parents because they feared their daughter would get poisoned by the Taliban. This happened all over the country, but eventually nothing came of it, and it just went back to normal. Well, normal in Afghanistan, you know. The life of a nun in the Middle Ages was a hard one. It still is to this very day. Hard manual labor and a life devoted to Christ. There wasn't much time for oneself. This would of course lead to some kind of stress or even mass hysteria. And yes, mass hysteria was involved. How do you know that? One day in a French nunnery, one of the nuns just began to meow like a cat. And then another. And all of a sudden, without any apparent reason, all of the nuns just began to meow in an organized manner, meowing loudly and collectively for hours. Eventually, this became too much for the neighbors of the nunnery, which dealt with the problem like any old good man did back in those days when the woman was acting out of line. He threatened to beat them with help of the army. Say what you want, but it did work. Eventually, this hysteria spread from France to Germany and Italy, except instead of meowing, they just bit each other constantly. A modern day terror is the mass amount of dihydrogen monoxide which can be found in people's tap waters in the modern day. It is most likely also in your taps. This dihydrogen monoxide will cause accelerated corrosion and suffocation. Now, how you respond to that might also consist with your intelligence. The more you laugh at it, the more smart you are, and the more scared and concerned you were, the less intelligent you might be. Sorry. This dihydrogen monoxide parody is a joke, which has brought fear into some, as calling water by a scientific name, dihydrogen monoxide, has made some fear it, and has even called it for being banned in public taps. They're talking about side effects of accelerated corrosion and suffocation also just mean rust and drowning, which can happen from taps. This is basically a good demonstration of why a lack of scientific literacy could be dangerous to society and create mass chaos. But man, it is fun. And now, the unmatched power of the sun. The Portuguese miracle of the sun was an event in 1917 where a bunch of people in Fatima, Portugal gathered to see the sun. As were told by 3 shepherds' children, they said that none other than the Virgin Mary would appear and perform circus miracles like a circus clown. In a good way, I guess. I would guess that the Portuguese just looked at them and said, hey, why not? Nothing's gonna happen anyway, so why not? And they met up at Fatima on the 13th of October that year just to see what might happen. Who knows? It was said that the sun had something to do with it, so they all looked at the sun for a bit. And then the sun began to fucking zigzag, emit multicolored lights, and then flow right towards them, right towards the earth without warning. As the crowd went wild, the sun also stopped zigzagging and returned to normal. But still, the sun just had a fucking seizure in front of the entire crowd, which at this stage had fully converted to Catholicism. Eventually, this miracle was also witnessed outside of Fatima actually in Rome by the Pope itself, as the sun again began to zigzag across Italy. Now, later on, scientists tried to look into what happened at Fatima that day, and as it seems, they concluded that nothing actually happened, and that the crowd just saw what they wanted to see. It was only reported in a small town in Fatima and nowhere else around the world, which would be kind of hard to believe, that none other on the earth except Fatima just saw the sun spin around. The crowd most likely got bored and just saw what they wanted to see, as nothing actually happened. Football has always been a man's game, because men love to fight. But sir, you don't fight in football. That's right. That's why we, the spectators, must do it for them. For the team. Hooligans are almost always to blame when it comes to football fights. But when it comes to sports rivalries, then even the average man on the street becomes a mean fighting machine. Which was also what happened in the Eastern Congo when the two teams, Sokosaki and Yuki, had a match. During the match, Yuki was losing, so in a fit of desperation and absolute lunacy, the Yuki goalie ran towards the pitch and cast a spell on the enemy team. Witchcraft and football, a dangerous combination. This led to the two teams fighting on the field as the fans began to cheer. And as the police tried to stop the fighting, the spectators threw stones at the police to hold them off. They gave the police no other choice but to tear gas the entire crowd, which resulted in a stampede, which killed some. Those killed in the stampede was also mostly children. This event began a riot against, well, something. Being the police, the death, the teams, or something else is not really known. They just had to get some anger out at something. The Monkey Man of Delhi is something of a myth in the city of New Delhi, where a kind of monkey creature has been lurking around, looking something like this. There have been different descriptions, but this is what it's more or less is known as being. It would attack strangers in the city and escape with monkey-like abilities like jumping from building to building. And what does New Delhi do when there's a new threat in the city? When public security is under attack? Why they make movies, films and shows about the attacks. Thanks Bollywood, good job. We actually haven't seen the Monkey Man in a very long time. He's either retired, dead or given up. We still don't know what, who or when he was. And maybe he might even not be real. Back in 2006, the inhabitants of Mumbai, India realized something strange about the water in the Mayhem Creek which goes through the city. It had apparently, somehow, turned sweet. Whoever found this out is unknown because who the hell wants to admit that they've drunken seawater? Also, who drinks seawater and then just thinks, a bit sweet today? Not long after, the beach at Tihal had turned sweet as well. As people began to wonder how dirty, filthy water had gotten sweet, they also ran towards the area en masse and drank the dirty water, storing it in bottles, just to see if it was true. I mean, there is still so much bacteria in that stuff, and it isn't healthy for you in any way, but whatever, you got a kick out of it. They drank it so much that the authorities had to get involved and advise people not to drink from the water as it would spread waterborne diseases among other things. And the fact that it's just fucking gross. I mean, trash literally swims around there daily and you're just drinking it now. According to the Indian Institute of Technology in Mumbai, it might have been formed by a natural phenomenon where rocks underwater had released a kind of plume which rose to the top above the seawater, giving it a kind of sweet taste. But at that stage, it didn't matter. People realized the water wasn't sweet anymore, and therefore they didn't care. Oh, those Belgians and cola. You do like mischief, don't you? Back in 1999, I murdered 2 prostitutes somewhere in Germany, but that's not important right now. What also happened in 1999 was a cola crisis in Belgium, where somehow, in schools, people found a link between the Coca-Cola drink and almost every kind of deadly sickness out there. In a total of 5 different Belgian schools, health issues rose dramatically. Heart attacks and heart problems were among some of them, which increased in the schools. As people tried to research why this happened, they found a link. Cola. Which is unhealthy for you in many ways, but it's not gonna kill your heart. Although apparently it was, as this school had drunk more cola than average. And somehow they just thought, oh well, there's a problem. The consumption of cola and Fanta apparently had an association with the illness. But as it seems, that was just hysteria. It was just some more unhealthiness in the school, that was all. And don't worry, you can still drink your cola. It isn't gonna kill you. Well, it kind of is, but so is everything in life, so who the fuck cares? You know, just be healthy and then everything is fine. The Halifax Slasher was a murder in Halifax, England, which caused a lot of trouble in the town for obvious reasons. For a whole week, attacks were reported with such weapons as mallets, razor blades, and knives. Police and even Scotland Yard was sent in to try and stop and find the Halifax Slasher. In the meantime, England went on as usual in a very surprising manner. They began randomly beating up people they thought was a slasher, which in reality was just a random guy they just beat the fuck out of. At one point, a man volunteered to find a slasher when people began to think that he was a slasher himself. Later, this apparent crowd chanted for the death of the man. It got so bad that they had to get a police escort out of the mob for safety. The situation had also grown out of hand, as the nearby cities had also gotten new reports and had witnessed the so-called slasher. However, at the same time, it was also revealed that a man had actually faked his injuries by the slasher and has lied about the entire situation. And then one more, and another, until a total of 5 people had come out and said that they've actually lied about the slasher and their injuries only for attention. 4 were sentenced for misinformation, and as it turns out, all claims of the attacks were falsified in some sense or another, and the slasher was actually never real. Thanks, England. Some kind of joke had gone out of hand, and apparently the entire city now thought a killer was among them. Back in 1976, in Mount Pleasant, Mississippi, multiple students fell to the ground, writhing all at once while attending a meeting. It is not entirely known why up to 15 students all went out cold at the same time for no reason, although the principal and others at the school had one idea in mind: the old Reagan way of blaming drugs on these terrible affairs. Apparently, a lot of drug activity had been going on at the school, and a mass use of it could have led to some kind of mass collapse. However, in the article linked on the Iceberg, there is talk of many other kinds of mass hysteria in schools. At one point, the article mentions that 40 girls fell over in a remembrance service caused by some kind of extreme heat and or stress. Some 300 students in the same school didn't want to go to school one day because of fear of being bewitched, whatever that's supposed to mean. Or how about 12 New York students developing a Tourette-like symptom at one point, or randomly, in all random classes as well. The world is filled with paranoia, but apparently schools is a hotspot. The Irish Fright was a mass fear of Irish people in England. Guess I don't need to say was then. Nah, actually, back in 1688, right after the Glorious Revolution, the Jacobite Irish army roamed around England to back up James II's authority after the Ranchers had taken over the country. As any good Englishman, they never truly trusted the Irish in their country, entirely ignoring the fact that the Dutch just overthrew their government, rather focusing on a small group of Irishmen actually helping the English people, and an English king. Stories of Irish soldiers burning towns and massacring folks went around like a fast wind, and soon a total of 19 counties knew of the so-called danger, while many towns were malicious against the Irish to protect their homes. Except all those stories were lies, and the Irish was only there to help King James II. Nothing else. Yet it was still enough for the English to form militias against the Irish. Truly, history never changes, does it now? This was what I thought it was at first glance. Oh no, my dog has become pregnant. Why, I don't have a male dog, which my little woofer also knows. Hello, your dog is also pregnant without any kind of male activity? Why yes, that is correct. Let's panic like the dogs we own. Ah, oh no. This is what it actually is. Ah, I surely love living my average life here in glorious India. Oh, what is that? That must be a good dog.
Oh, by the way, I'm horny as fuck.
Oh gosh, it seems I've been bitten by a dog. Why, that can only mean one thing. I am pregnant with a puppy inside of me, despite the fact that I'm a man. I will soon birth a puppy through my dick and die a painful death. Oh god, I am surely fucked, aren't I? So yeah, puppy pregnancy is a real phobia in India, where some believe a dog bite will lead to a person becoming pregnant with a puppy, which they will have to give birth to at some point, regardless of their gender. Now, if we just ignore the fact that is incredibly idiotic in every sense that is to imagine, let's talk about the side effects, like being able to see the dog in one's reflection in a body of water, barking from inside one's stomach, and, oh yeah, the inevitable death at birth. You will die from giving birth to a puppy. As this fear roams around the country, witch doctors have described a cure, an oral cure, which dissolves the dog and its dissolved parts go out when you're shitting without you realizing it. Now, actual doctors have said this about the disease. What the fuck? No, that doesn't make any sense at all, right? No, what am I getting paid for? God fucking damn it. The laughing epidemic is an epidemic which affects all those who watch my videos. Now okay, in reality, it was a pandemic in the village of Kashashka in Tanzania, where some students just couldn't stop laughing in episodes, which was at the time without rhyme or reason. The students who was talked about just laughed like a maniac for days without reason. Soon, other students joined in, making the unaffected teachers very confused. Soon, 97 out of 159 students were cry laughing for no apparent reason. Some laughing only for a few hours, while others kept on laughing for some 16 days. This spread to nearby villages as well, with inhabitants were just as confused as the teachers. Up to 1,000 people were affected, and some 14 schools were closed because of pure laughter. Coming up with a cause was difficult, but psychologist Christian F. Himpelman have theorized that it might have been some kind of stress-induced hysteria, which has made the masses laugh like crazy. But that is just a theory. An African theory. No, it's a theory and we don't know what it actually was. Back in the golden days of 2002, which you can definitely see in this BBC article about this event, some kind of unknown creature had begun to attack people's faces in northern India. It got to a point where the inhabitants of the area of the face scratcher demonstrated outside the police station, which they later on attacked, where after the police fired at the crowd to disperse the attackers of the station. This monster isn't described in a physical form, well, that good or that much, but the attacks are described in a fine manner. It would attack during the night and leave the victim's face scarred and bleeding. That was it. There's been some theories as to what this might have been, all from aliens to bats to a beast brought in by the enemies of India, aka Pakistan, to even the monkey man himself. Yes, he's back. Bollywood, where are you? And as it seems, we don't know what it actually was. It's not as if anymore, and it hasn't been for years. Oh no, who did that one? Okay, maybe I have recommended a part to this iceberg, and maybe only later on, after I actually got added, I realized my internationalist was shining as it was about Denmark and its history. Oopsie. Well, anyways, true story, the Danes have always been fearful of our aggressive neighbor down south. However, this Germanophobia, which is a real phobia by the way, the fear of Germans, grew exponentially after the Second Schleswig War in 1864. Here we, the Danes, lost 40% of our population and a third of our entire territory. Therefore, we were weakened to a point where Germany could just invade at any moment and wipe out Denmark for the map. Therefore, the entire nation became fearful of Germans. It could be seen in our writing, all about the tales of how we were superior to Germans, but we could also see it in the statues we built, about Danish heroes facing southwards towards the Germans, who might or might not invade. And of course, we built up the army. Despite being a mass hysteria, the Germans did eventually invade in 1940. By that point, we had gotten over the whole Germophobia thing. But in a sense, did it come true, or did it not? Who knows? Farvel for evigt, du tyske ørn. That syndrome is a mental hysteria where people think they're passing semen in their pee, which is associated with weakness, guilt, and white pee. It's not medically backed, but it still has a huge part in the Hindu belief. It is generally seen as a bad thing, giving people anxiety and a saddening state, which also is taking away their willpower and mood. And that goes with dick as well, it's kinda sloppy after this. It is linked with erectile dysfunction and impotence, and even a bad sex life. Okay, a lot about your dick, alright? What is it actually? Well, basically, there might be some semen passing through your pee while you pee, weakening your immune system. However, again, not that many people actually believe in it, it's only in a small area. Despite only being a thing in a small community which believes in it, things like antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills have said to help that syndrome in some ways. But again, it's not backed up by medical science, so take it as you will. Real-life supervillains, a theme I really do like. The Mad Gasser, also called the Phantom Enthusiast, was an actual cartoon villain-like person, or persons, who might have existed in the town of Madden somewhere in Illinois. During the first half of September 1944, it is said that more and more people began to smell some weird smells in and around their house. While some didn't see anyone near their house, some have claimed that they saw some kind of entity around the house as the smells appeared. As these smells appeared, some have claimed that they began to faint, vomit, and generally just get sick. No surprise, they contacted the police to both investigate the smells and that person that might or might not have been there. As more and more cases rolled in, he was finally dubbed the Mad Gasser, like a reference to the Mad Hatter perhaps. Although these Mad Hatter was never found, the origin of the smells was also not found, as police couldn't find solid proof of anything, making people think that someone had gassed their house. Later on, the police pinned the smell on nearby toxic waste, pollution, and just minor things like spoiled nail polish. It was dubbed mass hysteria, but perhaps the Mad Gasser was actually out there. There might have been a real villain walking around. Who knows? The daycare sex abuse scandal is a panic closely related to the Satanic Panic from before. Nah, still a good song name, it's so catchy. The panic is pretty much what the name says, a giant scare after a bunch of daycare centers had gotten reports of sex abuse all around the Western world. As if that wasn't bad enough, it was also claimed that satanic rituals were involved in some of these abuse cases. This sex abuse scare exploded in the 1970s and 1980s, when daycare facilities became more normal, and a thing more moms decided to do. As more children were disconnected from their mothers, The mothers were scared of the kids' well-being, which might have resulted in some of these cases. But also the fact that daycare centers themselves grew at the time, which would also mean the numbers of abuses in daycare centers would also increase just because the amount of children and daycare takers also did. Nonetheless, this is a scare which is still going on today, as one's children are never truly safe. Okay, that sounded violent. Even in the most safe places, bad people might slip in, and that's even worse. Okay, whatever. You know what I mean. The nihilist deal. The world is a scary place, man. Just get over it. Old Koro syndrome, a personal favorite. Koro is a kind of mass hysteria, where people think that the genitalia is decreasing in size and might even get so small it disappears. Now, not everyone has a monster cock around here, and don't be ashamed of having a tiny wiener. No, stop laughing. This is an actual serious thing. Yeah, the size might be good for show, but really, how you should dig shall show if you are worthy of a woman, men. Yes, a claymore might be more powerful than a broadsword, but if you have an unprofessional against a true swordsmith, then it's a different tale. And now, I'm not covering up here. I have a very average sized penis. Anyways, Koro is an overpowering belief that their dick will soon be gone for good. Koro is a Malayan word which means turtle, as your cock shrinks in, you know, like turtles. It's an actual penis terror around the world, but mostly in Asia. It is said to be caused by pseudo-sexual conflicts, masturbation guilt, or just not getting some bitches on your dick. Having Koro syndrome not only gives you great concern about how long you have to extend the ruler, but should also give you anxiety and guilt, or in other words, guilt over one's penis, which isn't worth it, boys. The Balkans. I'm sure it's gonna be ethnically peaceful. Anyways, the Kosovo student poisoning was an event where thousands of students in the Kosovo region were poisoned by toxic gases, but the reasoning is still unknown. While Albanian nuclear scientists, the most lonely title in the world, are still looking into this, thinking that some kind of problem regarding gas might have happened, Serbian scientists and just Serbian civilians say it was mass hysteria and then roll their shoulders. Thanks, ethnic unrest, making sides no matter what. In the many schools in Kosovo, some kind of weird white dust would appear on the desk. If they touched it, they would get some kind of symptom, like froth around their mouth, cramps, and even faintings. While only starting with a small amount in a high school, it quickly spread around the place, rather quickly actually, affecting the entire region. To this day, we don't know what actually caused this, because the Albanians want to blame the Serbians, and the Serbians want to make the Albanians look desperate. So we don't know what happened because politics. I mean, people fainted, but do you want to talk about politics? I guess that's how it's always been. Malaya is apparently known as the mass hysteria capital of the world, as many events have happened there where a bunch of people believe in a thing that might or might not have happened. Personally, from this list, I would say it's India. One of these many mass hysteria events was around 2019, where a schoolgirl in a North Malaysian town started a mass hysteria in the school. She was in a sleepy state where she said she felt a kind of tap on her shoulder. When she turned to face what this might be, her vision went black and she stumbled to the floor. Afterwards, it is said that she got a vision of some kind of demon with gore, blood and violence in the background and all around her. Her head hurt and she didn't have any energy to scream. However, her classmates did. After she fell to the floor, the entire school began to scream in horror, ripping through the school like a driplet in water. It ripped through the entire school as if something terrible had just happened. However, I'm doubtful that it really did. I mean, one person falls to the floor and all of a sudden the entire school bursts into chaos? Why? I mean, if your classmate or mine fell off their chair in the morning, you would laugh your ass off. Because that's bloody funny. It's hilarious. So why did not only her classmates not laugh, but the entire school scream instead? In fear even. She fell off her chair. And it's not like anything had happened before or since. It's just a simple sleepy girl who fell to the floor, and the people screamed for some weird reason. The article tries to sell it as some kind of creepy mass event, but I doubt it actually is. It makes no sense why an entire class, an entire school even, would scream in horror as one person fell to the floor because she's sleepy. That's just a YouTube clip, for God's sake. The Seattle windshield epidemic was a bit of a mass hysteria event in Seattle back in 1954. As everything was going as it always did, people in the town, and later the entire state, began to notice small holes on their windshields. It slowly spread to more and more people, and before anyone could think too hard about it, the entire state agreed that some kind of shenanigans was afoot. Theories began to rise as no one was sure what caused them. Some say it was sand fleas laying eggs in the windshield, creating small bubbles, which would later become holes. Others say some kind of weirdo was going around on a serial windshield bubbling spree, making small holes in people's cars and getting away with it. A sad hobby, and a bit hard to do over an entire state so quickly. Some even said that it was radio waves so powerful they would create holes in glass. Although, this was back then when radio was just a new thing, so that might just be hysteria. He did it, he said the thing. In the Hindu religion, it is a common thing to make offerings to the many gods, to get some kind of luck in your way. You can offer a lot of things to a lot of beings. However, when you offer milk to the god Ganesha, you are apparently going to get some unexpected result, as could be seen in New Delhi, India. As someone began to feed the statue with a spoonful of milk, the milk, slowly but truly, began to disappear. He tried again, and again it disappeared. Did Ganesha just drink the milk and accept it in front of their eyes? Well, that is what they believed, and soon, as the word spread, it spread pretty quickly. Pretty much overnight, Hindu temples in India, Nepal, UAE, Canada, and the US began to flood into the temples right after they had flooded into the supermarket to buy some milk. It is said that in India alone, milk sales grew to up to 30% in one day. As people began to flood into the temples to feed Ganesha milk, those looking after the temples had a hard time actually keeping the things together and making sure everyone could get in a safe manner. Soon, people were blocking the streets because they had to feed some milk to their gods. It pretty much became a day of chaos, as milk were poured into statues, streets were blocked, and when the milk didn't get accepted, the local atheists were blamed. Those damn atheists. Later on, when this fad was dying out, people realized that it was actually capillary action which made this thing happen. It basically means that liquids can flow into narrow spaces or something like that. It's basically that science could explain something about religion. And now I sound like an atheist. Oh, god damn it. Reddit, I'm coming. Also,
oh, somebody, oh, he needs some milk.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
and there we have it. So much hysteria in this world, huh? The world can be both a scary place and a funny place, sometimes at the same time. Mass hysteria is of course a serious thing, but still, laughing at the world is a bit more fun. Well, if you want more icebergs, either scary or interesting, then there are plenty on my channel. Just look at all those icebergs. Make sure to like, comment, and all that stuff the YouTube manual tells me to do. Alright, now that everyone is gone, it's just you and me. Yeah, don't leave. Only 2 patriots making this fine day video. Alright, no more Q. But still, I'm gonna drop a big secret right here. If I had one. I don't have one. I just think that in the end of the video, it would be a perfect place for like a secret hint. But I don't have one yet. It's just this. Making videos and you watching them. That's all there is. I made you wait for nothing. You can leave now. Not just me sitting here endlessly in space. God, it's boring around here.